All right. Well, welcome everyone to our conversation today about the current landscape of cybersecurity. Our discussion is titled The Seismic Shift in Cyber Threats. I will be your host today, Matt Phillips. Before we dive in, we have some housekeeping just to cover. First and foremost, this webinar will be recorded. You'll be able to share this with others in your organization if you like. Please ask questions along the way using the Q&A button that you'll see in the lower taskbar, left side of your taskbar on your Zoom screen. Let's get started. First, I want to introduce Rob Schenk. Rob is the CXO and cybersecurity expert at Intelligent Technical Solutions. Rob has been in the IT sector for over 25 plus years. How's it going, Rob?
Going great. Appreciate everybody's time and look forward to the conversation today.
And we also have Ryan from Field Effect. Field Effect is a cybersecurity organization that was started by some of the world's leading offensive and defensive cybersecurity experts to protect organizations of all sizes against cyber threats. Ryan will help bring some clarity to cybersecurity issues that pertain to businesses and specifically managed service providers today, and he has been doing that for over 10 years. So as we get rolling, thank you. Good to see you, Ryan. Let's say hello. So as we get rolling, I want to kind of start with a very general question, Rob. What is the current landscape around cybersecurity these days?
Yeah, well, thanks, Matt. It's a great question. We've seen a kind of a very large and dramatic increase in cyber attacks that have really started since the pandemic. It seems like you can't turn on the news these days without hearing about the latest attack or latest ransomware event that's occurred. It's affecting, companies across the spectrum. Uber, I'm based in San Francisco Bay Area. The city of Oakland had a massive ransomware attack that put the city out of business and commission for over a month.
And I'm going to interrupt you. What happened to the San Francisco Realtor Association just recently?
So this is actually just another thing that just happened in San Francisco. So actually a client of ours who's under this kind of security package that we're talking about got infiltrated. It wasn't actually them that got infiltrated. It's actually their partner that they leveraged to go ahead and provide their services to their client base. They had a mass ransomware attack. They've been down going on almost 2 weeks now.
So this happened 2 weeks ago and they're still down.
Well, they're hopefully spinning up today, but we'll have to see what happens. But, he's been, my contact over there has been dealing with this for a couple of weeks, and it's been very impactful to his organization. I'm hoping that, we can actually follow up with a subsequent webinar where he can be a kind of a guest host, guest speaker. We can kind of talk about just what that experience was like. So I think that would be probably very beneficial for the community. And I think just based on some conversations that I've had with him, he'd be willing to do so. So hopefully that'll be coming in the very near term.
So the question that comes to mind for me is, what has changed about cybersecurity? I mean, it's always been around, but what's changed, Rob?
Well, what's changed is, especially since the pandemic, has been this work shift, right? Work from home, transition to remote work. You have the boundaries of the network, which used to be within the office walls and office firewall fortress. It has extended to end users' homes, which are typically very underprotected. There's typically also as well, hackers are going to low-hanging fruit. Low-hanging fruit is the end user. A lot of phishing attempts, a lot of cyber training of most organizations is a haphazard, not uniformly deployed. And so hackers go for the low-hanging fruit. Once you get somebody's identity and you can get into somebody's account, you can start from there and expand and extend, and then you can start to do some real damage.
And I hope you don't mind the detailed question, but when you say a phishing attempt that happens in a business, can you kind of outline what you mean by that?
So phishing is basically the attempt to harvest a credential. If I can steal somebody's identity, if I can get into their user account as them, I am them. I can do what they are doing and what they have access to. So if it's maybe a senior person that has access to more confidential information, I can be looking at all that stuff as them. And so that's just where, things like two-factor authentication become important to go ahead and prevent that type of access. One thing that's been interesting is that, aside from the kind of cyber training thing that I mentioned earlier, is that hacking has become a criminal business enterprise. Right now, cybercrime, surprisingly, I saw this not too long ago, it's the third largest economy in the world behind the United States and China. It's
So
crazy.
it's bigger than many countries, is what you're saying.
It's the top 3 country in the world, cybercrime.
And Ryan, why, if so, all these cyber criminals are running around, why aren't they, where's the punishment for them? I mean, why aren't they being punished and caught?
Yeah, that's a great question, Matt. There are a lot of countries where cyber bad guys are able to conduct attacks, and as long as they're not doing it on their home turf, and if they're attacking foreign soil, they will not be prosecuted. They don't face prosecution, and that's really how we see some of these attacks evolve.
So based on what Rob's saying, it's become a global industry, and in many scenarios, what you're saying, there's no repercussions for their actions, or there's no legal, they won't be pursued or convicted for theft.
You got it. And so much so that there are even groups that are created with a variety of different expertise from the cyber bad guys perspective, and they form businesses, in essence, businesses that are funded by attacks on foreign soil.
So even some governments want to fund the cyber bad guys to industrialize, to organize, so that they can hurt their enemies, whoever they are. And if they're an enemy of us, obviously, then that would be something where they fund that group to work against us, to try to steal our information and other bad things, correct?
Yeah, you got it. And since COVID really expanded the opportunity in a lot of ways, and there are more ways than ever for bad guys to get into the organization. Because of remote work and it being so widely adopted, a variety of organizations have had to open entry points into their home network, into their own business network. They've had to adopt new cloud services and haven't as often evaluated their cybersecurity posture or their cybersecurity protections since doing so.
Rob, let me ask you this. If at least small businesses are safe, right? I'm assuming cyber criminals just go for large, 100, 200 person and up businesses, because that's where the real money is. Is that correct?
That's a great question. Answer is they don't care. They want businesses of all sizes. They go to where the money is. Doesn't matter what the organization's size is. I'll give you an example. Is a company that I know about through a peer MSP of mine, 6-person CPA firm. They were going ahead and preparing during tax season, getting their tax returns together for their client base. One of the partners at that organization got compromised. The hackers got into that guy's system, and as a result of that, he was the guy that was submitting the tax returns to the IRS on the client's behalf. The hackers basically fraudulently uploaded over 300 fraudulent tax returns. The IRS got wind of that, basically blacklisted the company, kind of putting a stop to their business transactions. And then they had to recover from that and pivot. It took them at this point, so they had to not only deal with the interruptions and client interactions of fraudulent tax returns, but also kind of cleaning up their own stuff. It's taken them at this point almost a year and a half to go ahead and recover from that. And they basically have had to kind of rebuild their clientele because they lost so much business trust.
So it sounds like they're up to a lot of bad activity. The part I don't understand, ransomware seems fairly simple. Somebody gets in, they encrypt your data. You need that data to work your business. You have to pay them a certain amount to get it back. But beyond that, Ryan, how are attacks being monetized? I mean, where's the money for all these big entities that want all the money? Where's the money for them?
That's a really great question. Unfortunately, the cyber bad guys are really just opportunistic. So they start by basically scanning the internet for any weaknesses or vulnerabilities that they can exploit, because there are so many ways now, more than ever, to make money off an attack. So if you're a 10-person company, but you've got social security information or credit card information or personally identifiable information or personal health information, all of that data can be sold on the dark web. The dark web is basically empowering cyber bad guys to transact in a variety of different ways and make money on attacks in more ways than just ransomware. So they can sell data online, they can sell usernames and passwords online, they can sell a list of entry points to start an attack online, a whole bunch of different ways. And one way that was mentioned earlier also is financial redirection. Financial redirection, whether they just if they can get into your email and they can sit there and wait for you to do a transaction with somebody you do business with, they can inject fake bank information. And really there's more ways than ever now to monetize an attack. There's a multitude of ways for the cyber bad guys to take advantage.
I have a follow-up question for you, Ryan. Before I do, I want to mention to everybody, if you do have a question, we'd love to see if we can work in anyone's questions. Feel free to jump in. But that being said, I want to take an approach, an overview, a simplistic approach. Let's say my data gets ransomwared. I don't even know if that's a word, ransomware. And I just want to take my chances and pay the ransom. Isn't that an option that we can just say, hey, maybe we'll get ransom, we'll pay the ransom, we'll get the data back and we'll move on? I mean, isn't that a course of action?
Yeah, that's a really interesting point that you bring up, Matt. There is this misconception that exists out there that if you go ahead and you pay the ransom, that everything's going to be fine. The unfortunate reality is that these cyber bad guys really can't be trusted. When your data gets encrypted by a bad guy and you pay the ransom, there are no guarantees that the restoration of your data is going to happen as expected. You may not get the correct information required to restore that data. Only some of your data may get restored. There's no guarantee, and we see more often than not cases where people come to us from these unfortunate circumstances and they've paid some Bitcoin or they've paid some ransom, and they've ended up not been able to completely actually get their information back. And it's an unfortunate. So
the criminals don't make good on their promise to give the data back sometimes.
More often than not, unfortunately.
How long, Rob?
They're criminals after that at the end of the day, right?
When a business gets ransomware, Rob, what's the average time to get it back up and running? You pay the ransomware, you bring it up in a couple of days, or what do you see? What's the timeline for businesses?
So the current average for a company that gets ransomware, before getting up and running to at least some semblance of normality, going on 16 days.
So it takes over 2 weeks?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what their setup is, but on average, it's taking a couple of weeks of time for a company to get back up and running. And there's also kind of an associated cost here, there's the ransomware cost that Ryan has talked about, right? I'm going to pay this ransom of whatever amount that they're trying to extort out of me. There's also the legal costs, forensic costs, there's hardware replacement costs, there's potential lost client revenue, there's reputational damage that occurs, there's team member stress. People just aren't able to deal with the situation and just quit. Companies are left to have it kind of holding the bag. So the cost gets to be really large, even more than just the ransomware amount itself. There's a lot of kind of correlating associated costs associated with that. And oftentimes some companies are not able to recover. I think it's like 30 or 40% of companies go out of business after having a severe disruption like this because they just can't recover within 12 to 18 months.
Okay. I have some questions from the Q&A. I'm going to ask one. There's a push to go fully electronic for accounts payable. It seems like hard copy checks is a safer route. What are your thoughts on, I don't know if I should ask Ryan or Rob this, hard copy checks versus fully electronic? Which would you suggest?
I'll maybe start, Ryan. I'll start, Ryan, then you can chime in. So electronic payments are fine. The main thing is that you have proper controls. So it goes back to having proper controls within your organization, making sure that everything is vetted first, then you have multiple checks along the way. That's more of a kind of a process type of situation. So if you have the strong process, electronic payments are a fine way to go.
And Rob, your sound wavers just a little bit. I'm just letting you know, you probably just want to pull the mic down a little bit. Ryan, if you didn't want, I have a question for you if you don't, unless you have more on that.
I was just going to share, to Rob's point, that it's critically important when transacting digitally that there is an element of human validation taking place. Now, many organizations have already implemented some sort of operational controls where they can address this, but it's critically important that there are not blind transactions happening, meaning that you receive an email from a vendor you do business with, and they say, hey, send this into this bank information, send this money to this bank information here, and you just take their word for it. There needs to be stronger operation controls with human validation. And sometimes that's picking up the phone and calling the person who's looking to, transact with you and validating that that is the information they are actually sending you.
So my next question is, I understand you're laying out all the problems. Ransomware is not a foolproof. The criminals don't always make good on the money. I get it. But what if we have cybersecurity? If a business has cybersecurity, aren't they covered, Ryan? At least they know that if there's ransomware, they're going to get their money back.
So cyber insurance you're talking about?
I did. I'm sorry. I meant cyber insurance. Yeah.
Yes, cyber insurance is an interesting one. So a lot of times having cyber insurance is great to help cover some of the restoration costs. So if you go to a service provider after you've had an attack, like ITS, let's say, and your insurance company is going to cover, and they're going to reimburse you for the costs you would spend to have them rebuild your environment. But a big challenge that a lot of organizations sometimes don't think about ahead of time is if you can't transact with your clients, if you can't provide your service, or you can't capture revenues through the period of which you're down, it can have a pretty substantial impact. The lost revenues from 3 weeks of being down can be substantial. And you definitely don't want to get into a situation where you have to go into your savings, your business's savings, and cover your expenses when you may have a limited runway there, and you're really not capturing revenues for the period that you're down. And cyber insurance does not cover that. They don't reimburse you for lost revenues,
Payrolls, and
none of that stuff,
and lack of productivity. They're not. That's not what so they won't reimburse you.
No, unfortunately not.
Rob, how much, you talk about solutions. If we put, a solution in place that, let's say we're talking about today, how much will my daily work life change if that security solution is put in place?
This has been something that we've had to look at internally. To be frank, we are a steward of all of our clients. If ITS were to get compromised, that's not going to be a good day at ITS, nor our client base. So, we've had, over the last couple of years, we've been taking a look internally. Hey, how can we go ahead and improve our own security? And so part of the things that we added internally was more of a kind of a real-time monitoring and alerting system that provides a comprehensive view over all parts of our ecosystem internally. So that goes from the desktops, laptops, servers to network, what's happening on our wireless networks, what's happening with mobile devices, what's happening with smart devices, smart TVs, things like that. And then also all our cloud systems, where a lot of us use Office 365, Google, Box, Dropbox, Salesforce, et cetera. And our ITS Secure package contains a holistic monitoring and alerting system, almost like a real-time alarm system for your network over that entire ecosystem. So if you think about how networks have typically been designed and architected over the past 15 to 20 years, kind of prior to the pandemic, it's been a combination of kind of endpoint, antivirus, you got some firewall, got some spam filtering, and then maybe have some two-factor, and that's kind of met the threat. As things have changed with the pandemic, work from home, et cetera, the threats have dramatically increased. And so now there's this gap here, and that's why you have such a large influx of cyber threats. And so we've had to kind of look internally to go ahead and raise the bar so we can meet the current threat. And so that's what ITS Secure provides. I mean, probably best analogy is like, how would you protect a house, right? Well, first you start off with a really strong foundation, and then you have a layered approach. I want to go ahead and have locks on the doors. I want to have locks on the windows. I want to have a barking dog. I want to have a fence around my house. I want to have maybe an alarm system, video surveillance. I want to have the security guy driving around the block, letting us know if something happens. So taking that same sort of approach and applying that to a computer network, having a layered approach. If somebody gets into one particular protection, they're blocked by something else, right? So for example, two-factor authentication, the monitoring real-time alerting that we're talking about, security awareness training, making sure that your systems are patched. All of those things kind of holistically are included in our ITS Secure package.
And then if they have the package, how quickly would they know that somebody's in their network? Like, how does that work? You want to walk me through that, Ryan or Rob?
Yeah, I can take that. So, the average hacker is inside a network for 2 to 3 months before they're actually discovered. At that point, once they get into a system, they're basically trying to move laterally. They're trying to elevate their privilege. They're trying to get to administrative level. They can get to administrative level, then they can go ahead and monitor emails. They can get into somebody's account. They can delete backups, and they wait for that perfect time to go ahead and lay down their ransomware and put a company out. They're kind of timing it for maximum impact. So it's really that, in previous kind of iterations of designs, like I mentioned earlier, that visibility isn't there. You don't know until the event occurs, right? With real-time notifications and alerting, you're knowing when somebody is in at that moment, and then we get them out then, right? But you don't want to wait the 2 to 3 months and have something happen. You want to know right then. And that's
because
what the
that
shift.
allows them to start looking at the money flow, and that allows them to start doing more damage the longer time goes.
The longer time goes, the longer they're in the system, the more damage they can inflict, the more information they're gathering. It also gives them the opportunity to exfiltrate data out of the network. And this is kind of one of the things that happened in the city of Oakland. The origination was a phishing attempt, phishing email. The hackers basically came back and they sucked out data out of the Oakland network. They came back to Oakland, hey, pay the ransom. City of Oakland said, hey, no way. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and publish online employee list. They got everybody, social security number, personal information, posted online up to current mayor and previous mayor, right? So all of that came online, this is just a couple months ago. So it's that's how they work, and why you want to get the real-time notification, because you want to get it when it's small and deal with it right then.
Ryan, once these security measures are put in place, ITS Secure, for example, what happens if they find somebody in the environment? What are the steps that happen there?
Yeah, so the ITS Secure bundle is really designed to be the most modern and sophisticated response to changing threats. So as Rob mentioned, the system's designed to detect in real time any types of behaviors that a bad guy may be trying to undergo at any stage of an attack. It's actually proven in field to protect all the organizations it's deployed in from a worst case cyber event. So it basically covers everything: your network, your endpoints, and your cloud, and it's designed to both automatically respond to cyber events, as well as immediately engage human response 24/7, 365 in the event that it's required to be supported.
Yeah, I mean, we were testing this internally, right? So we had deployed this system about a year ago internally. Within a week, we got a notification, security high severity alert, and it turned out it was basically like PowerShell script. It was basically what had happened was one of our engineers was studying for a certification test, and he had downloaded a preparation test software. We want everybody to get trained up and learn stuff, and so that's not an issue. The problem was that the file that got downloaded had some malware in it, and then it tries to communicate back to command and control back in Russia. And with this system, because of the proactive alerting, it was able to just stop the network card on that laptop and prevented it. It was isolated. It couldn't spread. Previously, we wouldn't have had that visibility, and this would have been more of an issue that we would have had to have dealt with, But that's the kind of level of visibility and kind of proactive action and automated kind of settings that we can go ahead and implement that provide that really, for me as shareholder, business owner, when that happened, I was like, wow, I could feel that I could sleep better at night. Cybersecurity is one of those things that definitely keeps me up at night. Having the solution internally has helped me feel that kind of sense of peace around our own infrastructure. We want to make sure that is extended to everywhere.
That makes sense. I'm only just going to assume for time that I want to stay past 10:30 PST and hope everybody else does. But I want to get to two things before we hit the 10:30 mark. One is my notes are saying that if somebody wanted to fast track a conversation about ITS Secure, they can send an email to secure@itsasap.com, reach out to their client account manager, and that'll book time immediately to get the information started. Anyone at Intelligent Technical Solutions can fast track this, client account manager or a VCIO, or send an email directly to secure@itsasap.com. I'm going to keep going past the 10:30 mark, but I had a great question that someone asked one of our clients, does changing the organization password every 3 months help protect intrusions? Ryan, what are your thoughts on that?
Having a good password policy certainly does help, and it will help in some cases. The challenge really is in a lot of circumstances, cyber bad guys are doing some pretty creative things to try and steal passwords from people, including like spoofing the Microsoft page, sending an email to a bunch of your users and saying, hey, it's time to reset your password, and please enter your username and password here to reset your password. And then inadvertently, users who are trying to just follow best practice end up unfortunately giving up their credentials, their username and password. So there's a lot of different creative ways that the cyber bad guys are trying to infiltrate the organization, including pretending to be these password reset pages. So that protection does help, but yeah.
But you need a lot of other pieces. Great question.
Yeah. Can I add a little bit to that too?
Yeah, let me just say, great question, Mr. Cohen. Thank you. So
yeah, thank you, Mose. Password is one factor, right? So it's one portion. You can get key logged. Someone can suck that in the password out. It's really two-factor authentication, having something that you own, your phone, something that your password, right? It's a good practice password policy to go ahead and swap your passwords periodically, but you want to have another layer of protection in order to go ahead and significantly reduce the prevalence of a phishing attempt. As an aside, I just learned about this not too long ago. If you look at all the Office 365 mailboxes worldwide, only 30% of them are protected with two-factor authentication. So that means like 70% of the world's organizations that use Office 365 are highly, highly vulnerable to even the most basic hacking attempts that a kid in his garage on his laptop can go ahead and infiltrate. So it's about having multiple layers.
Rob, I want to interrupt you because there's a common misunderstanding about two-factor authentication, and I know it is going to be part of the ITS Secure package. When you're doing multi-factor authentication, do you have to show your face like 7-8 times a day, or how does that work? Because it always feels like people are concerned it's going to slow you down when you have to use multi-factor authentication. That's why 30%, to your point. What's that slowdown? Because people just feel apprehensive about getting into multi-factor authentication.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. The way that the systems are architected now, it'd be kind of like the equivalent is you're typically going to be notified when you're joining a network that's unfamiliar. So for example, if I'm in my office and I log in, the first time I might go ahead and have to do the two-factor authentication. What ends up happening is that I just get a notification to my phone that says green approve, red deny. I go ahead and type in my password, I click approve, I'm in. So the actual workflow of that is very fast, right? You're not going to get prompted every hour, day, et cetera, when you're within a trusted environment, right? But if I go traveling and I go to the, Starbucks.
So wait, let me interrupt you. So
Yeah.
if I'm home, let's say I work remote or at my desk, how many times a day do you think I have to put in looking at my phone?
It's infrequent because it's a trusted situation.
So not
right?
many times because
Not many times.
because the location is already kind of understood by ITS Secure. So I wouldn't have to do it like every day even.
No, it's more about if I go traveling, I hook up to the hotel Wi-Fi.
Okay.
I go to the local coffee shop. I want to work through that connection. That's more like those kinds of situations where I'm going to get more prompts, right?
And one of the questions I was asked is the package that we're talking about here is it, are you referring to software or hardware or both when we're talking about this package? Because I want to kind of get an understanding of that.
Yeah, so it's a combination. So there's going to be a agent, antivirus agent, effectively, endpoint detection called EDR, that gets installed on all laptops, desktops, servers. And then there's a network level component. For a small network, say 50 users or less, it ends up being the size of a shoebox. It connects into the network, and it's basically looking at all information that's being traveling back and forth, wireless traffic, wired traffic, mobile traffic, and that information is getting logged and analyzed. And then you have the cloud piece. So the cloud piece would be Office 365, Azure if we're doing cloud servers, Amazon Web Services, Box, Dropbox, Salesforce if we use that. Those integrations are connected to the system, and then we're getting holistic visibility over all of that stuff. So example, if I have an Office 365 mailbox and a strange rule gets created in my Outlook that is malicious or nefarious in nature, maybe it's redirecting to an unknown Gmail account, for example. Because we have this visibility at all levels, we can actually automate the disabling of that account and prevent the bad actor who has infiltrated that account from doing any monitoring or exfiltration of data. Then we can kind of address that versus, hey, current scenarios, we don't have that visibility. The account gets compromised. You think about what happens down the line, gets monitored, and then eventually there's a business email compromise where some financial redirection occurs, in a month or two. Becomes this help desk ticket. Oh my God, I think something happened, but all that stuff occurred. We're talking about getting it at the source and preventing all that down level stuff, right?
So Rob and Ryan, I didn't know what your plans were because we're well over our 10, we're at 10:35. Do you have another 10 minutes and then we'll wrap it up? Because I know everybody's listening and I don't want people to keep people, but I do have some questions. So are you good to go another 10 minutes, Rob?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I'm happy to answer any other questions.
One question that came early is how can I educate my employees about cybersecurity?
Well, as part of the ITS Secure solution, we're going to have and deploy a cyber awareness training program to the end users. So really, it's one of those things that we've seen the most effective cyber training for end users really starts at the top with leadership buy-in. It's really kind of cultivating a culture, a mindset of security. And this can be driven oftentimes from cyber insurance, or if your company's starting to get audited, that can be kind of like the driver to go ahead and implement this kind of a program. But it's one of those things that's like, we want to gamify it, having, creating the situation where employees and team members are willing to share, hey, you know what, I think I got this phishing attempt, and letting other people know about it. And that's celebrated, right? Leadership is leading by example and wanting to go ahead and, hey, you know what, I've done the training. This is important for the organization. It's one of those things where leadership has to kind of set that tone, and it becomes very successful. And then at that point, you're lowering risk because, frankly, end users are the first low-hanging fruit that are often targeted. And so providing them and arming them with the basic information about what does a phishing attempt look like? What are some of the telltale signs? What do I need to know? And then having them kind of, build it into the system, have that communication going, and it really helps to lower risk. And that's just kind of, one slice of kind of a multi-layered, overall package.
We're running out of time, but I do want to say to the people listening, I want to thank everybody for listening and for hanging out so long and giving us a little bit of extra time. And I do want to ask the same way that you communicate. If there's anything you'd like to hear about, the biggest thing that Rob wants to do with these webinars is bring value. So we feel like the cybersecurity question is so vast that we want to have maybe some more cybersecurity webinars, but there's also other sectors that people are busy. They don't always have time to ask a question. Webinar seems like a convenient way. So if you have anything that you would like to hear more about in a webinar platform, please let us know. We may send a survey out asking you that as well. So
can I just add a little to that?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so we want to get as much feedback as possible. So, this kind of takes multiple forms. It could be a webinar, it could be blog articles, it could be even videos that we have on our website. We have a large repository of kind of educational material on our website. And so we'd love to hear topics. Artificial intelligence is something that's been, I've been hearing a lot lately, is that maybe that's something of value for folks. A lot of cybersecurity topics, as Matt mentions. So feel free to just, if you want to lob in a question or just with some topics, we'd love to hear that and love to get that feedback.
And someone asked what our cybersecurity email was, which is a great question. And we gave the answer, but I'm going to say it again. The answer is secure, SECURE at itsasap.com. Ryan, let me just answer one of these questions. How long does the package take to learn our company's processes, especially that, somebody wouldn't want false positives? So how long does it take to learn a company's processes? Oh, that is a secure vendor, that kind of thing.
Really great question. So out of the box, at the heart of the IT Secure package, the solution was built by some of the world's leading cybersecurity experts to natively look for behaviors that could be malicious or suspicious. There's not a reliance on learning the processes per se, the normal processes that exist, although the system does, in addition to look for malicious processes that could exist, like techniques, tactics, and procedures that a bad guy may go through, or software behaving abnormally. The system also retains what we refer to as tombstone data, or historic data related to user behaviors, like the types of applications that people are normally accessing, how much data they're normally accessing, what internet provider they're normally logging into the internet from, what device they're normally accessing the network from. So we keep a combination of data at the heart of the system to cross-reference and validate security events with. So you can rest assured that there's no really long delay or onset before definitive security events can be detected and responded to. And there's not a multitude of alerts that require investigation. The system's very intelligent in the sense that it's able to derive definitive security outcomes out of the box based on the behaviors that should be occurring in an environment, and it adds to that information additional detail based on the standard behaviors of an environment as well. So that's a really great question.
So I have another great question that I feel weird calling out people's names because I don't know if they want me to. So I think we should end with this question, and then I know we could go on and on and on. Let's save it for our next webinar. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much, Rob. I'm going to have you answer this last question, Rob. How safe are the password manager apps?
Very timely question. You had a very large password manager get infiltrated not too long ago, LastPass. actually a system that I've used in the past. Are password managers safe? Typically, yes. You want to have a very strong master password. You want to have two-factor authentication configured. You want to make sure that you're keeping that system up to date. Having a password manager is better than not having a password manager. Otherwise you're just kind of keeping things in spreadsheets or written paper and things like that. And there's so many accounts that we're looking at over, just think about all the kind of browser logins that we have. It gets out of control pretty quickly. And so having a password manager to help kind of navigate all of that is helpful. But you want to choose wisely and make sure that you have a very strong master password with two-factor authentication enabled, and you want to keep that safe. If that gets out, then you're kind of potentially giving away a lot of your passwords, but that's at least a critical thing. And the other thing I would say is that don't reuse passwords. Every password that you use for different sites should be unique. And that's what the password manager is there for. Password manager is there to go ahead and keep unique passwords for all these different systems so you don't have to remember all this stuff. But just doing so is going to lower your overall risk, because oftentimes you see, like in dark web, there's internet underground, all these credentials are being kind of, traded and sold and harvested online for hackers to go ahead and, sell and so forth. Passwords that are reused are the most common way for someone to get just owned and their identity compromised. Ryan, you want to add anything to that?
Just you nailed it. Being able to use unique passphrases for various applications is critically important. Not reusing the same password, and that's the benefit. That at the heart of it, that's the core benefit of using the password manager.
I want to thank you once again, Rob, for your time in this webinar. I know we went over and a lot of people stayed, so that's great. I know that you have a passion, Rob, for keeping businesses safe. You're very paternal in that way, where you really feel protective of your clients and colleagues and want to prevent all that loss. Ryan, thank you for your time and for adding your expertise. I would like to know if you'd be willing to do this again if we want to schedule a future webinar.
Absolutely.
I also want to thank the team at ITS. They worked really, really hard, asking everyone to come and getting the word out every which way. And it was a good team effort to get everybody here to hear these messages. So
yeah, I just want to thank everybody for spending their time and kind of hearing this out. It's an important topic. I know it's it's an uncomfortable topic as well to discuss. There's a lot of kind of stuff related with cybersecurity that's kind of unfamiliar and anxiety provoking. But together, I think we can partner to go ahead and kind of elevate the level of protections, keep ourselves safe, kind of create this peace of mind, focus on what you're doing, running your business, and not having to worry about the cyber bringing your company down. We want to avoid that kind of situation. I've been doing this a long time, and I've seen a lot of the fallout of what a situation is. I know Ryan's done that as well and seen that, and we don't want any of that for anybody.
Thanks everybody for joining. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you again in our next webinar. Bye.
Thank you.